Hello and welcome to the Ogden City Council meeting for November 24th, 2015. I'd like to note that all council members are present except for Chair Heyer and Council Member Stevens. They've been both asked to be excused tonight. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Council Member Blair for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Will the audience please rise? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please take a moment of silence with me. Thank you. So next on our agenda is a request to be on the agenda, the Ogden Trails Network Committee, and I think Jerome Berg is going to, excellent. Mr. Berg, if you come up to the microphone, he's going to do the presentation.
You're welcome to use this
Right.
right here to go forward and back.
Okay. All right. Thanks for hearing us. It's good to see some familiar faces, and I feel kind of strange with my back to the audience, so hope that's all right. My boy's coming on now. Come on, Pete. My name is Jerome Berg with the Ogden Trails Network. We're going to give the sunset report this afternoon. We were originally going to plan this for June, but it looks like you guys are real busy, so we're glad that you're able to see us. Thank you. This is a pretty cool picture. There's only one problem with it, and that we're missing several of our members, but this is kind of the enthusiasm that we see when we're out in the trails. We're all volunteers. There are a few staff members there. This particular day was celebrating the last post from a grant that was given to us back in 2014. This is at the Canyon Trails Head. Does anyone know where Canyon's Trailhead is? Wish you would. That's where we need some city help because it's not logoed or anything. It's right at the mouth of Ogden Canyon, right across the street from Rainbow Gardens, okay? So we're here to kind of talk about the sunset report, and it's my understanding that we're here to see if we want to continue with this, if we've done our accomplishments and goals. We'll talk about those items, but also we're an advisory committee to you, the city, the mayor, and we have some recommendations that hopefully you'll carry forward to make this system even better. We have one member that's actually from corporate America, put together a great vision, mission statement that you've probably seen before. Many of these elements have to do with community involvement, as you see. And that's where, when we're wondering how we're going to serve our customers or the city, we always go back to this document. It really helps serve our needs very nicely. Sometimes you're in an elevator. What do? This is where we use that. Some of our accomplishments. Everyone been out on the trails? Whether it's the River Parkway, the asphalt trails, the dirt trails, all those posts, those fancy green plaques that you've seen, we put those in. We dug those holes, we put those in. Those posts previously were there about 15 years ago. They've rotted, they've all been replaced. Had a lot of great comments on, hey, the directional ability of our trails. It's been a really great benefit for us, and a lot of involvement from our sponsors, as you can see here. Another great accomplishment that we've done is we've put together an Adopt a Trail program where we've breathed a little bit new life into that. Of our 31 trail segments, 29 are now occupied. We ask each of these companies or individuals or businesses to help us out with 50 hours a month, or 50 hours a year, which adds up to a lot of volunteer hours. You can see on the right there kind of a map of some of the trails, but mainly it's the bench system, the River Parkway, and then some of the Centennial Loop. The picture on the lower left is the 36th Street Trailhead with a lot of happy people after doing a trail work day up there. The trails don't take care of themselves, they need our help. Here's a partial list. You might recognize a lot of names on there, business owners, residential owners, companies. We're finding out that a lot of companies use this as a great way to get employees out and do a kind of employee benefit. Just recently, Envy sent some of their production workers to our site on Strong's Canyon. They actually paid for them. Their time out there was paid by the company, which we thought was really cool. And then they actually catered dinner into them. But we're finding a lot of people enjoy this opportunity as a way to kind of bind, further relationships with their employees. In fact, the Caldwell family is at Birch Creek, and we got to get on him because he's not done his hours yet. So maybe put a word in for us, would you? This is not yet installed, but Weber State has been super, super helpful and supportive of an interpretive trail right above Weber State. This is meant for teachers that can bring their classrooms up and discover kind of the different elements of the bench system. The illustrations that you see up there are the signs that have been made. They were to be installed this past October, but they've been delayed a little bit. So over the winter, hopefully, if you walk that area, you'll see this wonderful system. In addition to that, we've put a new bike system in above Strong's to help bicycle commuters avoid this section because this is a hiker-only area. And that was a 3-month effort, a lot of trail cutting, and it's improved the bike loops immensely. We have a Facebook page. You guys have been on that lately? About 4,000 likes, a lot of really, really cool photographs, a great way for us to get back to the community. We use that to help promote events, give recognition to our trail volunteers or sponsors, among other things. It's about 4,000 likes now, so this was done back in June. Meetup is a service that's offered where you sign up for it, and when trail events happen, you can be notified by email and RSVP for the event. We are working that with the Forest Service and Weber Pathways, so it's kind of a combined effort for the community here. The Shindig, we couldn't think of a better name, but we just thought that was kind of a cool name. We had that the last 2 years at the Front Climbing Gym. I don't know if you guys have been there, but usually about 300 to 400 people. Last year we had 500. You can see some of our sponsors there. You really can't go work on the trails unless you have funding. So we use this as an avenue to help generate funds for us. The Young Subaru decal there is a real special one for us. We were actually chosen, Ogden Trails Network, as one of 4 volunteer organizations that during the month of December, if Subaru sells a car, they donate to their chosen charity. So Ogden is a local charity, the other 3 are national. That's a pretty big deal, okay? With the funding, we've purchased tools, and we've got an awesome set of tools, as you can see there on the right. That's a shed that's at the 22nd Street area. We have funded the purchase of shovels, rakes, wheelbarrows, and things like that. So if the community calls in, we'll help send out volunteers and organize a work party at a different trail section around the city. If you go to the cashier right below us, you can purchase a Secrets of the Ogden Trails book. It's a nice paper-bound book put together by Ron Thornburg and a couple other gentlemen on our committee. It really is a classy book that we're selling, and all the proceeds help generate funds that go back into our trails. A lot of our local merchants are carrying this book. We've sold about 3/4 of those books already. It's a very popular item. And if you hadn't had a chance to kind of go through there, there's some really interesting, neat tidbits about the Ogden Trails, okay? Here's who we are. These are all volunteers. On the left side, you might recognize some of those names. What we decided to do about 6 months ago is we formed some subcommittees because we were getting big and there were a lot of things going on. So we have Dave Stewart working on trail projects and development. We've got a communications subcommittee, activities, fundraising, and then we just brought in the Ogden Bike Park that Josh was managing. So works out really well. A couple of our members are on the Weber Pathways board, so there's good cross-communication that way. And we also have several people that come to our meetings but are not currently on the board, but Chad Burnham with the front. We've got the Ultra Runners and a lot of good representation around the city. We generally see 3 to 4 visitors per meeting, which I think is pretty exciting. On the city side, representation from city planning with Joe and Eric Janet and Shannon. They do an awesome job for us. The Planning Commission really hasn't been present too much. I think that was in transition, and then Perry with Parks and Public Ways and Parks, and then Juan with the U.S. Forest Service. Every Thursday, 4:30, our meetings last about an hour. So here's our goals. We really want to expand our assessment process where our local users go out to our trail systems, look at what they need, try to rank those, help prioritize projects that we can do as volunteers, or if we can't do them, something that Perry's group could. We'd like to kind of work on a smartphone application. Everyone has those now, so we can locate damaged areas, concern areas, graffiti damage, whatever, and get that reported quicker. And make sure that we go do things that biggest bang for the buck, right? We'd like to complete our sign and post database. We did a lot of effort to put all these posts in, over 500 signs and many, many posts. We need to have an easy way to access those, and if there is damage, we can get those replaced in short order. New trails. We love new trails. We like to work with Weber Pathways and the Forest Service to figure out a way to get from the Wasatch Front to the Wasatch back. Right now you can go up Buse, but that's a long, long trip. It's not doable on bike. It's a hiking trail. I think there's a lot of other opportunities out there that we can work with, but that'll be a long-term goal. Continue with our bike park work and expand that into 24th Street. We really would like to elevate our major trailheads. I mentioned Canyon Trailhead earlier. What a great trail spot that is. It's at the intersection of the BST and the River Parkway. It's like the epicenter of all of our trails, but no one knows it's there. I'm not sure if it was a funding issue or what, but there's no signs on that. There's nothing. We'd like to continue and work with the Kingfisher area. That wetlands area has been dry, so we're trying to get some water back into that. There's been a lot of interest over a beginner mountain bike trail. If you're a mountain biker, the bench trail is really nice, but it's not a place that you want to go there your first time. So something within the city, it'll help support our bike shops, and I think further expand kind of a family outing. And then again, more and newer trails downtown here. So recently, Weber County Health has been working on the Bluff Trail, which runs from 20th to the fairgrounds, or not the fairgrounds, but Lauren Farr. They've done a stellar job. That area is run over by vandals and graffiti people, and if you haven't had a chance to walk that mile or so, it's really, really in good shape. So take a look at it. Grow empowered trail sponsors. That's probably my highest priority item. And the more people we get out there, the more people that are involved, the more payback we're going to get. You wouldn't believe the ownership when people are out there fixing problems, working on the trail. They'll look at that, and from that point on, they'll help you for further causes. We'd like to work with the Forest Service. They've offered to help train the Trainers Day so we can bring in people to learn how to properly maintain trails. Continue our support with the Forest Service and Weber Pathway guys. We're all one community. We all have the same goals. We're not competing. And lastly, we have issues with graffiti, and the police department's been extremely, extremely helpful and help get the community aware of that number so we can support his efforts. On the community events, we've done some really neat things. The picture in the lower right is a Halloween ride that we do. And this was the second one that we did this last October, and it was just a wonderful time for kids and their families to ride up and down the River Parkway, candy, soda pop. The smiles on their face were unbelievable. We did a Volks March that Amy was at back in August. That was a lot of fun, and we hiked the Big D Loop and had bratwurst afterwards. And we try to do 2 or 3 of these a year, just to get people out there on the trails and aware of what we're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to do. We'd like to do a Valentine's Day snowshoe event. So last year there wasn't enough snow, so hopefully this year we can do that. Well, it all looks great, doesn't it? But it's not easy. It's hard to get volunteers. Some people don't play nice. We have vandalism. We have trail erosion. We have things that need to be kept up. In the upper left there, the swastika, we had a person go bring her young daughter to Nature Center North, and that's what they saw. Mommy, what is that? And how do you kind of react to those things? So we have issues where people are damaging our trails. We're trying to correct that as quickly as we can. Enforcement, making those areas open is key. This particular area has been sponsored by an art teacher out of Ben Lomond, and it's very difficult to remove the paintings from the rocks, but she's figured out how to camouflage that with some other painting. So it's been helpful, but still it's disheartening when you see that type of thing happen to items that you've worked so hard for and paid for. On the right, we took the lead and put together a list of rules that we thought would be appropriate for the trails. We had these drawn up. An artist did that for us. They were mounted, and then we placed these at our major trailheads, both with the graffiti hotline and the police hotline. We'd like to expand that to maybe using the smartphone and the Q decals so they can get quicker response. But the message here is these things take work. We're all volunteers. So I crossed off concerns, but I think there's some opportunities that we'd like to recommend. One is the urban trails, which I would call the asphalt trails within town, from the bench trails. You need to manage those differently. There's different people using those. There's different ways to get access to it. And from the community, the trail users really don't know where Ogden City property starts, where Riverdale property starts or ends. They just want to enjoy the environment. And there are issues where there are communication problems between these municipalities on how to upkeep trails and what to do with them. On the bench trail, I'm not sure what's going on with the private landowners. We're kind of either kept out of the loop or there's nothing really going on there, but that's a huge concern, especially at the bench with the major Kings and the Belkins and those other folks, and how we manage that land, and also with the Forest Service land. And I think a lot of that's relationship building. And then one thing we're working with Joe Simpson on is currently our ordinance has people from different locations. We'd like to update that ordinance to represent user groups. The trail runners, the mountain bikers, the hikers, the climbers, we're well represented, but we think the ordinance should be changed to help augment the primary users. Hopefully this hits home, but we're unclear really what the development is for this city, especially when it comes to natural assets, our outdoor resources. And what we would like to recommend is get a person hired, a full-time person hired to lead that campaign. We're a group of volunteers, managing volunteers with an overworked part-time staff, and we've done a lot with what we had available. But the problem is, a limited few with most committees kind of make the most difference. So if as people come in and out, this could ebb and flow. And I know that the city is trying to share and promote the outdoor area, but we need to put some effort behind the management of that. Get a trail outdoor plan in place. I've not seen one, although our staff member Joe recently pulled one off a file cabinet, and it doesn't do us any good there. It was done a long time ago, and this person needs to manage that and use that as a guideline of how we want to treat these trails and resources. It's a great outdoor recreation mecca, and promoting it. And finally, I think where we fit in is part of a super group of the trail users with other entities in town, and help get the silos out and help us better communicate among groups so we can use our resources and wisely in how we cooperate with things that we're trying to do the better Ogden. So I don't like to give long presentations, but we had a wonderful board, a lot of great thank yous out there. We've got a wonderful board, great supporters, our Adopt a Trail sponsors, wonderful support at the planning area, wonderful support with Perry at the Parks and Rec. Nate Klein has been outstanding with the Ogden Police Department. In fact, with the Nature Center North issues, he's moved his Archangel surveillance system out there. He personally takes extra trips to check that area out. He's wonderful. Mark and Rod with Weber Pathways do a great job, visionaries with where they want to bring our outdoor recreation trails. Juan is extremely overworked with the Forest Service, taking some responsibilities up at Logan. This past summer was really difficult with the Forest Service with all the fires, so a lot of their resources were pulled away from the trails. And then you, the City Council, and Mayor Caldwell, we appreciate that. I love that photo, 252 miles of trails. We're promoting that, right? So let's kind of move it out of the volunteer area and put some plans together to help us further our efforts and continue to grow this outdoor mecca. So thank you.
Thank you.
Are there questions, or am I done? Pass? Another 3 years?
I just want to say, you know, I see the work this group of volunteers does and the amazing things you're able to do, the funds you're able to raise to help accomplish things on behalf of Ogden City, and I'm really grateful for all the time you put into it because, you know, on the trails, I do see your volunteers, and it's amazing what you're able to do, so thank you.
I would second that, and I don't know all the people on the Trails Committee, but I sure know Jerome's not just talking the talk. He's out there working hard, so.
So I have a question for you. So you the pitch, and then what happens next?
Well, we're going to do it right now.
I have a full-time job. I give a lot of these, right? So what happens next? I hope it doesn't get filed away. I hope that you take this seriously. I think there's a huge opportunity for this city. I think if you get the business development people together, there's a great return on investment. But when you're dealing with part-time folks, even though their intentions are good, their boss is going to want to migrate them to different areas. So we really need a person responsible for outdoor recreation here. Not just trails, but all the entities.
Any other questions? Any? Okay.
Okay, seems there's no questions. I'll make a motion that we adopt the proposed ordinance 2015-49.
I'll second it.
So there was a motion by Councilmember Garner and second by Councilmember Wicks. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair,
Aye.
Councilmember Garner,
Aye.
Councilmember Gochner,
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks,
Aye.
Acting Chair White.
Aye. That passes. Just to follow up, this ordinance now passes. The sunset report then will go and further until 2018. So thank you for that, and I just wanted to follow up with your question. So.
And I was just going to say, I don't know if the administration's prepared to respond to that, but what would the next steps be to their request?
We're not prepared to respond to that tonight.
I mean, any increase in position would need to be dealt with the next budget. So-
Yeah, and the need is everywhere in the city for more staff, but that's something we can talk about later. We've noted the request, and we'll add that to our considerations.
So next up is the approval of minutes. Councilmember Wicks.
Thank you. I have reviewed the minutes from the work session of October 6th, 2015, found them to be accurate, and would make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Wicks and second by Councilmember Gochner. This is a voice vote. Oh, my goodness.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Next.
So next up on our agenda is common consent of items A through E. This is also a voice vote.
I will go ahead and make a motion that we approve the Trails Committee appointments and set the public hearing for item B, C, D, and E.
I will second that.
We have a motion by Councilmember Gochner and second by Councilmember Blair to accept the common consent. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes as well. Next up is the reports from the Planning Commission. The first one up is the Residential Infill Ordinance Amendment. I think that's Mr. Montgomery.
Acting Chair and members of the council, you have before you tonight a recommendation from the Planning Commission regarding a petition which had been filed to revise an existing ordinance, which we call the infill ordinance in the zoning regulations. What the infill ordinance was, it was developed decades ago as a means to try to look at vacant properties that were in the East Central area, specifically in the inner block. We, of course, had 10-acre block developments. People developed around the fringe, and then the inner parts of the properties were all left vacant, creating an unkempt area and an area of concern. And as development was looking to take place, those inner blocks could not meet the zoning regulations that existed for that overall area. So the infill ordinance was developed to look at special requirements, special exceptions that could be granted so those properties could be developed and increase the densities of the area, increase the livability of the properties, but not change the zoning, but give these special exceptions. So that has been in place for many, many years. Recently, we had an individual look at a piece of property that had similar conditions, but was located outside of East Central. And as they looked to try to figure out how to develop that piece of property that was in the inner portion of a block, and looked at several different design options, none of them could work because of the existing zoning. The individual petitioned to have the infill ordinance be applicable to their area also. And so the Planning Commission reacted to that petition to consider amending the infill regulations to extend beyond the East Central area, but to include the R16 zones as well. And as the Planning Commission looked at it, they also included the R15 areas, because what has happened since the original infill is we rezoned part of East Central to R15. And the changes were never made in the regulations to include that R15 area for infill. Well, the R2EC and the R3EC did allow the infill projects. So as the Planning Commission looked at this, and they looked at those areas which are zoned R15 and R16, those are the older areas of the city, and those are the areas where we generally had those vacant inner parcels. The Planning Commission felt that those same regulations would be appropriate in those zones as they are in the East Central. And so they're recommending a revision to the infill ordinance to allow the language to have that provision extend to R15 and R16 zones in addition to the present zones they're allowed in. And so the recommendation before you tonight is to look at that amendment, stating that the purpose of the infill is to look at not only East Central, but other areas that have followed the older development patterns, and noting them as being the R16 and R15 zones. And then to make a revision that in the conditional use chapters of the single-family zones, that the infill provision also be something that allowed. That way that all the regulations of the infill can then be triggered for those projects and be reviewed as a conditional use permit. The Planning Commission has recommended unanimously approval of this petition, and it's for your consideration tonight.
Any questions?
Is the petitioner here tonight?
Let's see if the petitioner is here. Oh, yep, she is.
Would you like to come up and talk?
And the owner of the property is here as well. My name is Rhonda Bachman. I'm here representing Scott Allen, the property owner. It's been a long process for him. This started back in 2007, actually, and we're the third group that's tried to help him do something with this property. And it's been really tough on the property owner because nothing's been approved. And as this gentleman just stated, it's an impossible piece of property. I don't know if you have a copy of the map. I didn't bring that this time. I didn't know I was supposed to. So, but it's basically, there's almost 2 full acres that are landlocked. They're locked inside of the block. And the way that it's positioned, the front of the property is commercial, and the entire back half, so 0.20 of the acreage is commercial, and the rest of that 2 acres is all R16. So it makes it impossible to do anything. Fortunately, the property owner does own the portion of off of Chester that we can make a new entry point instead of using that commercial point. So, do you have any questions for me?
Any questions?
Council members, I think the map she's referring to is on page 72 of your
It is.
electronic packet.
Yeah, we have it.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay.
No, I don't think, are there any questions from you guys? Okay. I do have a quick question. How many of these properties exist outside the East Central area in our city?
Roughly, there's about 10 to 12 pieces that we identified outside of East Central that could take advantage of this.
And everything that would be built would have to still go through the planning commission?
It'd be reviewed as a
and
conditional use permit, so there'd be neighborhood noticing. One of the issues you look at is compatibility to that area. So each area is going to be different, so the compatibility issues will be different for each location. So that's why there wasn't one set standard, because they'll vary at each location.
Public input? This is a time to receive any other public input regarding this?
Seeing no movement, I will go ahead and make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2015-52.
Second.
There is a motion to close the public input from,
Actually,
or to adopt the ordinance. Sorry, don't we have to close it first?
No.
Thanks. Sorry. There was a motion to adopt the ordinance by Councilmember Gochner and a second by Councilmember Gardner. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Garner.
Aye.
Councilmember Gochner.
aye.
Councilmember Wicks.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Acting Chair White.
Aye. With that, it passes. So next up on our agenda is the East Central Community Plan Amendment. And I believe Mr. Montgomery's back up.
Okay. Again, Madam Chair and members of the council, you have before you tonight a recommendation from the Planning Commission regarding a petition that had been filed to look at amending the East Central Community Plan. We affectionately call this the Library Plan Amendment because it deals with Lester Park and the library plans for that area. The reason this petition came about is the projects that are being developed with the library. You recall there was a bond election, general obligation bond election the county had to improve the library facilities throughout the county. The Ogden Library was one of those key buildings looked at to try to meet their new mission for the next generation. They call it the third place mission, that the library being a gathering place. And in order to accomplish that, various changes are being proposed to the library. Those changes are technological improvements, a meeting and training room additions, a cafe, a lounge area. All these activities that would be focused in the main branch on Lester Park would take what had been generally private space, office space, storage space, and that's shown in the red on that three-level revision of the library, and change 9,000 square feet of that to public spaces to make those areas accessible to the public and not just for private use. That increase of public activity then brought a concern that the existing conditions on the site may not be adequate to meet the growing demands and the changing demands proposed with the library. Not only were there interior changes proposed, but there are also exterior renovations proposed, that being an outdoor performing and gathering place on the east side of the building, and an east entrance from the library to this plaza area. This east entrance also opens up then access to the library from other parts of the park, and also will put demands for additional parking, especially along the street for this new entrance, because it may be closer than the existing parking lot. So all these things combined, the interior renovations to create more public space, these exterior renovations to create this plaza and gathering spot, all brought out the concern of a need for expansion on the site. This drawing here illustrates that in the proposal that was brought to the Planning Commission, 19 additional parking stalls were proposed to the north of the existing parking area. And in addition to those 19 parking stalls, that additional improvements to connect portions of the park to the library would be looked at, connections to the Golden Hour Center in that parking lot so that there'd be overflow parking opportunities when the Golden Hour Center doesn't have an activity going on and maybe the library does. Shared parking can take place there. Connecting to the playground area and also access from 24th Street to get to a circulation system that would take advantage of all the park. Of course, the present conditions are we have the library and its 77 parking stalls. We have the Golden Hour Center and its 47 parking stalls. There are 7 angled parking stalls in front of the library on Jefferson. The rest of the street is parallel parking. We have an older dilapidated restroom, a dilapidated pavilion on the park that are being replaced at the present time. But those are the present conditions of the park. Back when the library was proposed to be constructed on this site, there was a resolution done in 1966 with the city and the library board and the county. And that resolution talked about leasing an area defined as 1.49 acres for the library to be located here. And in that agreement, there was the language that all efforts will be taken to reasonably blend and balance the park with these library uses to make sure they all integrate together and that it's just not be a construction site for one building or another building, but all of these things work together for the benefit of the community. In that agreement, development then took place of the main library. Since that time, we developed what we call the Central Community Plan. During that community plan process, which took place in 2008 and 2009, as we met with the citizens of that area and addressed concerns and the future vision of the area, one of the concerns that came out was the express of the park, Lester Park itself, and about losing space and the park becoming a building lot rather than a park, because sometimes the tendency is to just go to the free public land to do public buildings, and soon the park is forgotten. So the neighborhood was concerned that that not take place, and so they put in language, and the council approved that language into the Lester Plan that we prohibit expansion of parking and buildings onto Lester Park. And as I mentioned, then a petition was filed this year to amend that language. And really, why we're considering this amendment tonight is not only is there that language in the plan, but there's also the language in the plan about building on the parks as neighborhood amenities and open space and civic functions. In the proposal that came before the Planning Commission, not only was the library looked at and the parking lot expansion, but other things were looked at to help make connections into the park. For example, the existing parking lot, if you look at it where the library is, there's a retaining wall. So some people cannot access that parking lot and get into the park. The plan that has been presented that the county had proposed was to look at creating some ADA ramps and open that parking lot up so people could have access to the park by means of sidewalks and these ramps in the parking lot. Looking at landscaping on the north side of the proposed parking area so that it would be buffered from the street, since Jefferson is a major, 24th and Jefferson is a major view corridor, so that as you drive up 24th Street, you would not just look at a parking lot, but you'd have landscaping and screening so that parking lot will not be visible from 24th Street. Also looking at extending sidewalks to make connections to key points in the park. Looking at new lighting along that walkway to improve the access and the usability at nighttime. And also putting in additional bike stalls to meet the other transportation needs. The proposal was also that there be a design charrette that would take place, and the library would help give cash prize award of $25,000 to the winning entries, that this design charrette would be intended to plan the overall Lester Park and how the library and the park can integrate together and meet the future needs of the neighborhood with this design charrette. And that as this has been taking place, we've had interest from other groups, such as the Rotary Club. They had talked about maybe the possibility of being involved in the project, helping with the design charrette, maybe even looking at maybe one of the amenities that might be proposed in the design as a centennial project for the Rotary Club. So we've had interest being proposed now that as we come up with a master plan for the overall Lester Park, that there's also other groups interested in participating and being involved in those improvements and development. The discussion also considered, with this revision of the library, things the city would be looking at. For example, angled parking on 25th Street. With that entrance being opened up on the east side, 25th Street parking may be the more desirable since it'll be closer to the door than some of the parking stalls. And angled parking on 25th Street would increase the parking available for use both for the park and for the library. And even discussion of another 7 stalls, angled parking on Jefferson to go with the existing 7 stalls. So again, there'd be more convenient stalls next to the front door of the building. These are things the city has discussed about doing as part of the improvements to the park. With those discussions, the Planning Commission then felt amending the plan would be an appropriate recommendation to you. The proposed language that they're asking you to consider tonight is basically making an amendment to the existing language saying prohibit expansion of buildings onto Lester Park. You notice crossing out parking. And then additional parking not to exceed 20 new stalls, 144 total, may be considered provided that improvements to the park are made that create a holistic design for the park and provide connections and amenities available to all park users. This language the Planning Commission proposed would look at then if there is an expansion to parking, that it be in conjunction with an overall design of how it integrates to the park and improvements that are made to the park. I need to make mention that any time a public improvement is proposed on public property, the Planning Commission has to look at it for consistency to the general plan. Without this change of language, they would recommend denial of the library expansion of the parking lot. With this language, they would now be able to consider the library's request as it meets these criteria established and looking at not only the expansion, but then how does it tie in and meet that holistic approach. So it opens the door for that consideration to take place, that when such time occurs that additional parking may be proposed, that those other factors will be looked at and considered based on this proposed amendment language. And so that's the Planning Commission's recommendation to you tonight for consideration.
Thank you.
Great.
Greg, I was wondering if you could talk about what % of the park right now is open space? Of the
green space, it's about 70%. And maybe the follow-up would be that, what would this do?
how would this impact that?
It'd probably, reduce it down to about 68%. If you looked at that 19-car parking stall area proposed.
I think the information from the plan that was provided to the Planning Commission says that block is 79.3%.
So,
Open space, 8.5% building, 12.2% hard surface.
So from that 79, maybe take away another 2%. Yeah.
And I know this is a little ticky-tacky, but 2019 is, why the difference?
Just the idea that if Lester Park gets restriped, would we hold it, if they get an additional stall by restriping without expanding that, would we then say, no, you can't do that? Just to allow a little flexibility, or if you take out an island and allow another stall to be in an island in the parking.
Okay, great. This is an opportunity to receive some public input. Those come up and clearly state your name and address, and
Stacy Jones,
and you have 3 minutes, sorry.
2460 Madison. And I just, I'm talking about the diagonal parking on 25th Street. You guys, well, I don't know if you guys are the business offices, let 6 group homes move in that area. And there is no parking on 25th Street or no parking on Madison Avenue. And I'm afraid if you guys put all the money into the parking, these school employees are going to be using them. So I'd like to suggest that you mark them there for the library and the Golden Hour Center only, and actually enforce the law. And I knew the Golden Hour Center was going to move at one time, but I've talked to Bob and they're going to stay. But if they ever do move, I'd suggest that you level the building and replant grass and give us back some green space. I've lived there since, well, we've owned the property since 1977. There's been a lot of changes. So, I mean, we got boys' homes and girls' homes right next to each other. So you can imagine all the swearing and stuff that goes on all day long. Skateboarding, cussing, yelling. But that's it. I mean, I just don't want you to waste the money to do that for a business to use them all up.
Thank you.
I'm Joseph Bauman, 1764 28th Street. Council members, appreciate your 3 minute of time. The comments that were just made about the parking on 25th Street is, to me, is kind of ludicrous when you get into angle parking. And I talked to you before when I was here a few weeks ago, that if you have 2 buses going by in the wintertime and you have angle parking, that gutter system, if you go look at it, and I don't know if you had an opportunity to go out there after I commented last time, would have to be taken out and redone. You're going to have cars sliding down into that gutter in the wintertime in the snow ice type conditions. I'd highly recommend that you approve the parking that's been proposed by the library system to put it on the campus, if you will. Ogden City's had an ordinance for years and years that the whole impact is they want to get cars off of the street and into public, private parking areas rather than being on the street. That's why they build parking lots and everything else. So my recommendation would be to do that. As far as the concern about the green space being eliminated, you're talking about a minuscule amount of area because you have a restroom that's been there forever and it hasn't been open forever. It's been just an eyesore to me to see that thing locked up. So that would be gone. That's part of this project. You'd demolition that and put the parking stalls in that area. So as far as green space, you're not going to lose any green space whatsoever. It's going to still be intact. And it's going to highly improve Lester Park with the additional parking because you're going to have more access to get around to the east side of the building where the amphitheater, if you will, is going to be constructed. Another thought I had is that while they're doing the renovation on the library, you have a contractor there. It's going to be cheaper to do it now. There was some thought of why not wait for a master plan for the whole entire park. Let's let this be the first project, and then the rest of it will fall in place as time goes on. And it's going to be cheaper to do the parking lot now. You're going to have a contractor on board. It's going to be within the budget constraints. I think Roy is under budget right now, so the bond's already been passed. So it's not as if you're going to have to go back and reinvent that financial asset in the future. So from my position, as an Ogden City resident, I'd highly recommend that it be approved and go forward.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Travis Pate, 2546 Jefferson. I had just a couple of thoughts with regards to the parking. Or 8, 9 of those. With regards to it, it says library or museum or gallery, 1 stall per 300 square feet of building. Places of worship, 1 stall per every 400 feet of primary meeting room. Public assembly, civic center, those types of things, 1 stall per 40 square feet of gross space. Schools, grades K through 12, stalls 2 stalls per classroom. Item 8C may as well be on this also, because if we're talking about 20 parking stalls at Lester Park, we're talking about 80 stalls in the D School property. We're taking green space and paving it. We're doubling the size of the parking, the on-site parking for the LDS Church there. We're maintaining the parking that's on the east side of the street for the new D School, for the entrance. And we have an overall gross, or basically overall net addition of parking in the East Central community of 100 stalls. I don't think that parking's the problem. If you actually look at the aerial maps and look at the infill parking, the 2 churches that are geographically based, meaning people typically can and should walk, have the largest parking lots. I recognize that there's shared use opportunities. Superintendent Smith stood right here and said, yes, we're interested in shared use. And yet 15-12-7, overlapping and shared parking restrictions, shared parking, the use of 1 stall for 2 or more uses on the same lot as the parking, commercial or manufacturing zone. We've had since January of 2013 to upgrade shared parking. It's used exclusively at Polk Elementary and the Ogden East Stake Center. So why can't it be used for the Ogden Stake Center? Why are we shifting their entire parking lot? If you read the verbiage of the interlocal agreement, it needs to be on this agenda item too. It's a parking issue. And so I think in that sense, basically, the Ogden City's efforts to build a sustainable future are to take hold. They must do so in the day-to-day lives of our people and our workplaces. Our stores, our neighborhoods associations, community organizations, local government, libraries, labor unions, schools, religious institutions. And yet, my friends of the Ogden City Council, what you have before you tonight on both the Lester parking issue and the later agenda items is that the amending the interlocal agreement to basically the reconstruction of the D Elementary and a subsequent demolition and complete eradication of from history all traces of a key element in Ogden's notable mid-century modern art era, meaning we're restoring a library. We're tearing down the other Ebers Pierce building, or John Pierce. John Pierce designed the clock tower at Weber State, Weber County Library, D Elementary, Weber High School. We have notable things as a collective. It's historically significant. And the current interlocal agreement bypasses the planning commission process. It just circumvents the whole thing. Thanks.
Any others?
I have one more. This is Joe Bauman again. I have one more comment that I'd like to make is that on that amendment.
Sorry, you can't do that.
You're not going to be able to build your restroom if you don't change.
Good evening, Acting Chair White, council members. I'm Alexander Clift, 2683 Jefferson Avenue. And I know the folks from Ogden Trails Network already left for tonight, but I definitely appreciated their presentation today. They've done a lot of great things in the city, and I agree with them that we have some fantastic outdoor opportunities here. And I would argue that that's not just limited to the trails networks, but also to our city parks. I do live just down the street from Lester Park. I used to live right across the street from it, and I would walk to it a few times a week. I believe most of you received my email today about some of the other things we've done in that park over the last few years. It's a great space, it's a great opportunity, and I've definitely enjoyed having the ability to live that close to a park. And I do have a question based off of Mr. Montgomery's presentation to us. If we have the ability to increase stalls by restriping lines or removing islands or things like that, why is that not the first thing we're looking at? Why is that more of an afterthought? But also wanted to bring up, he mentioned the design competition taking place in January. I'll agree that with these improvements to the library and the improvements that we hope are going to happen in the park, that should draw increased traffic, that should bring more people to our neighborhood, to our city. But if we design a parking lot before we have the overall park design built, I don't think that really makes any sense. I think that there's a way we can potentially work to combine the two of those and have a better overall plan. The library says they want to do a few improvements, adding, basically moving the retaining wall, adding sidewalks, adding lights. But if they do those before we actually have a fully thought out park plan, again, that's kind of putting the cart before the horse there. Overall, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. Thank you for everything that you do, and I look forward to seeing what happens with Lester Park in the future. Thank you.
So there's any more?
Yes, to finish. Page picture 2604 Jefferson Avenue, about a block away from Lester Park. So with all due respect to the applicant, who I think has yet to take the stand here to sort of explain their side of things, this isn't a hearing about the library. This is actually a hearing about the East Central Community Master Plan. And there are 15,000 residents of East Central, not all of which were noticed about tonight's decision that you're about to make with our vision for our community. I appreciate the fact that the library has put in a lot of time and a lot of money, and hopefully a lot more money, to the tune of $20 million or so, to that portion of our neighborhood. As someone who's been part of a revitalization effort of over $20 million in the block adjacent to the library, I can tell you that a lot has changed since the plan was drafted in 2008, 2009. We're ready for an amendment, and we're ready to sort of reimagine our vision, but I don't think that 15,000 people are represented here tonight. I am on the board of the Charlie District Community Council, which we have surreptitiously been sort of calling ourselves instead of the East Central Community Council. And we have about 500 people engaged digitally and 150 people regularly attending meetings. During these meetings, people have expressed concern with eating up a quarter acre, over 11,000 square feet of park space for parking. Yes, it may be 18 stalls or 27, depending on how you count it, but this is about a principle here. This is not about parking. The principle is that we're an outdoor community. The principle is that liberty and justice for all 15,000, not just the one applicant. That I don't believe that this body can, in their hearts and in their minds, approve an amendment, however be it small, to the master plan without taking into account the rest of the people who are not represented here tonight. In addition, if that 11,000 square feet or a quarter acre were actually put to market and the city were actually to receive some sort of monetary reward for giving up that quarter acre, it'd be at least $50,000 is what it would go for on the market. I can appreciate the county's ponying up of $20,000 and the upcoming charrette and community, let's call it the park master plan, park site plan. That's coming next year. And again, as Alex said, I think the cart before the horse term comes to mind. As well as the connections to the rest of the park that they're promising, but there's really no teeth in there. And that's what the Planning Commission will hopefully do. But I don't think that this body at this time can really approve an expansion and amendment to a plan without fully assessing the community's wants and needs. And I think that there's a lot more that we could deal with kind of on the planning and staff level to make sure that the parking is met and that everyone is happy with the outcome, including the connections to a master plan, roads that would typically go nowhere because we don't have the rest of the park figured out yet. We really want to. We want to have our voice heard. We want to work with Rotary. We want to help them fundraise. And we want to have a park that's usable, that's signature, that's a destination for everyone by 2018. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. So I apologize, I didn't know the applicant was here tonight. If you'd like to come up and...
Thank you. Tom Brennan, EDA Architects, resident of Salt Lake City. Here on behalf of the Weber County Library. Several years ago now, 2013, we actually presented in work session to the City Council the plan for renovating Weber County Library at the Lester Park. And at that time, if I can figure out what's... there we go. The library, one of the first decisions was whether the library was going to stay in its present location. At that time, the the Weber County Library felt that there was a strong desire to retain the John L. Pierce library that was built in 1968 on the park, and that there was a strong demand for library services. They've seen over the last 10 years a steady growth in both the number of attendees as well as the number of items circulated on an annual basis. The other opportunity that the Weber County Library felt was that it was in the right place, that centrally located in the East Downtown neighborhood, of course, that is having a resurgence, close to the Central Business District, close to the East Central National Historic District, close to several schools and other civic institutions, that it was in the right place. But it was not large enough to be able to continue to serve the growing demands and needs. And so what the library looked at doing was removing many of the storage and non-public elements from the library so that we could increase, as Greg Montgomery stated, increase the number, the square footage and the ability to host more public programs and larger public programs. Primarily on the lower level right now is primarily administration space, storage space, and back of house space that is not serving public functions. The proposal is to vastly, on the right-hand side of the screen in green on the lower level, represents the proposed public spaces. On the left, is the current in pink public areas. Vastly expanding that so that we're able to host not only more events concurrently. Right now there is 2 classrooms on the lower level that are able to handle about 20 people per room, and then there is an auditorium or an active auditorium that hits about standing room only at 75 people. Expanding that so that we're able to handle groups of 50 or more people simultaneously in numerous spaces, and potentially single events of 150 people or more. This allows the library to keep many of the programs that otherwise would have to be relocated outside of this library to some of their other libraries, which they do not want to do. There has been also, I think, discussion of and study of the existing parking lot. I know that the city planning staff did an evaluation about a year ago of the parking lot activity. I believe it was once every 2 hours for an entire week. They went out and documented the number of cars. And yes, there were many times where the library parking lot was more vacant than used, but there were also a significant number of times throughout that week that was studied where the library parking lot was in excess of 80% full. And in fact, the image I showed today is one that was downloaded yesterday off of Google Earth, showing that the library parking lot is full. And so it is a challenge for them to be able to do that. You can also see the street parking on Jefferson is also fairly well filled up. So there is a challenge that the library is trying to address with parking to be able to respond to the community needs. Now, we do recognize, and I think it is important to a portion of the proposed renovation internally to the building and on their current site to improve pedestrian access and the ability, the capacity for those people that are using bicycles to access. They have 22 stalls, bike stalls at the front west entrance off of Jefferson right now. For bikes, they're regularly filled up. We're proposing to double that number and add with the additional entrance on the east side of the main entrance, add additional parking for, or holding areas, lock-up areas for bikes. Also, we believe that that additional entrance to the east, which will be opened just like the main entrance, it'll be open all the time. It's not going to be a controlled entrance. It'll be a main public entrance to the east. Will make it much easier for those people that are pedestrians coming from the east. The other mitigating elements, though, that Greg Montgomery referenced, in addition to the on-site, potentially the on-site, on-street parking on 25th Street going to angled parking, adding additional parking stalls there that could be easily accessed or serve that east entrance. We are thinking, and we have had recommendations from planning staff to try and connect to the library, or to Golden Hours, so that there is the ability, as Greg rightly pointed out, to utilize the parking there that might be used for, or might be in demand for special events in the evenings, generally when Golden Hours is not open. Also, the idea is that currently, when the library was originally installed in 1968, there were diagonal sidewalks that went crisscrossed the park, but unfortunately the sidewalk that extended to 25th and Jefferson was never extended. There's a dirt path that goes through the grass. We would like to try and extend that so that it makes it not only more convenient for those people coming from the east and northeast to access the library, but also simply to access other areas within downtown and making the park a little bit more walkable and friendly. I know that the city is replacing the restroom. Right now, the library has served as the public restroom for the park, and it's part of the program. They realize that that there are people that will want to use the changing rooms. We are installing a unisex changing room that provides for special needs that the public parking, or the public toilet room may not be able to serve, for family rooms and et cetera. Lastly, we are looking at participating in some of these improvements in the park with the city, and have been in ongoing dialogue between the county and the city to try and assist financially in some of these improvements. That's an ongoing dialogue that's really not part of my, that I'm not playing a specific role in. But all of these suggested improvements that are really outside of the current parcel dedicated in 1968 to the library are suggestions. The library is in full support of the proposed public design charrette and design process to look at how the library, or how the park can best transition and meet the long-term needs of and desires and aspirations of the community. Not just simply of the library as one of those members of the community, but the community at large. So we're not asking at this point for, and we're not proposing that these changes and these design changes be a set in stone element. They are simply suggestions that are put forth for your consideration by the library as elements that they might participate in. But first and foremost, as Greg said, we have actually been able to raise $30,000 in partnership with the library board and Friends of the Library and the Rotary Club to assist in financing this moving forward. And we look very much forward to the opportunity to work with the city, with the community, to support a robust community design process. And with that, if there are any questions, I'd be glad to take them. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. I think it's Mr. Montgomery, if I can ask you. Oh, anybody else for public input? Sorry. Guys?
James Ebert, Far West. I'm representing the entire county, maybe not, depends. It's much nicer being on this side of the microphone. It's a difficult decision, and I understand what you have to kind of go through in making decisions like this. We have been through a long process, and I'd like to express my appreciation to Ogden City and to their staff and to the Planning Commission for helping us work through this. We do have a parking issue at the library, and whether it's on street or on site, we have to figure out how we're going to address this. If there are some procedure or process issues in there, we can understand we need to work through them, because at the end of the day, we're tasked with finding resolution. We believe that what has been negotiated to the point of on-street parking and any extension that is allowed probably is the only decision that we can find at the end of the day. We're not sure how else to address those issues. To make the use of the library something specific to the demographics we're looking at, we have to have parking that's close enough for them to walk to with children, or for those who are a little older or seniors. And so my recommendation, if I could be so bold, is to follow the direction that the staff has outlined and that the Planning Commission has reviewed. And again, I'm extremely appreciative of the work that's been done on this. And from a county perspective, we want to provide a facility for that service district that allows them to use the facility. And whether it's within walking distance or if they have to drive, provide facilities that allow them to park in a proximity that makes that something that allows them to do. So I appreciate your time. I know they're difficult decisions, but again, I think the staff has done a tremendous job in putting forward a design that will work. And as Tom pointed out, that this is an initial design, and as we work farther into the process, it may change a little bit depending on recommendations, again, from staff and from the Planning Commission. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else?
Quickly, my name is Jared Larson. I'm the president of the AIA Northern Utah section. The design shred has been mentioned several times today, and the AIA, the American Institute of Architects, along with the Young Architects Forum, is the entity that was contacted by the library to participate in this design charrette. We have a long-standing tradition of giving back to the community by our professionals volunteering their time to give their expertise in design assistance teams, and we're very excited to act as a third party that is solely focused on the quality and the community engagement of this project. We're planning with all the stakeholders, and we've met with the library and the Trolley Square Community Council and several others, and we'll continue to get feedback. And then in the spring or early in the year, we mentioned some type of public outreach event that we're still planning, but really get the public's view of what they want in that park, and then with that information, define a program, a required list of what people want in the park, put on a design competition, and work with the community and the city to implement what Lester Park should be. So with that, there's no questions regarding the design charrette. I will sit down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Others? You can come up.
Kathy Gambles. I live at 829 Vista Drive in South Ogden. The library has been a resident of the park for almost 50 years. It knows the community. It knows the space. It honors it. and respects what's there and the possibilities of how it might be enhanced. I think the very fact that it's not talking about wanting good things to happen in Lester Park, but has put a lot of time and effort and energy into seeing that it's happening now and the possibilities that can be there that really invite all of the community to be a part of it. And I am grateful for the bond that was passed and everything that was put out at the time in saying that we have a wonderful opportunity to bring community gathering space in being very respectful of the space that's there and seeing that it can be enhanced. Thank you.
Anyone else? I have a question on timing, and I think you had mentioned that there was a timing issue as far as when this might be built. Is that?
So we're moving forward with designs of the library within the building, not including any redesign of the parking lot other than repair of the existing. We hope to break ground, we plan to break ground this spring of 2016. It is a 2-year construction process because we will be maintaining portions of the library open throughout the construction process. So one of the reasons why we are here tonight, and one of the reasons why we're eager to continue moving forward is so that hopefully as the contractor starts to finish out the site construction a year plus from now, that this process has been seen through, and that there is some consensus in terms of reinventing Lester Park and how potentially the library expanded parking might fit into that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Will anyone from your firm help with the charrette or be part of that, or
well,
be involved with that at all?
we'll likely be involved, but I think one of the reasons why the Young Architects Forum has been brought in is as a neutral party, as Jared said. I think for us to lead that, we're probably a little biased. So while we would participate quietly, I don't think that we would be necessarily trying to lead that process.
I have 2 questions. One, we've talked about the angle parking on 25th Street, and I don't know if we've committed to that for sure, but there was discussion about that being back-in parking. Is that something that will happen?
It's something that we're considering, yes.
Does that mean yes? Yes?
It never is enough for you, is it? I daresn't say yes until I think our engineers have had an opportunity to look at it and make sure it's safe. If it's safe, then yeah, I think it's something we'd like to do, but we need to make sure it's safe.
Okay, I guess I was just, that one of our citizens had a concern about that, and it seems like maybe the back-end parking might make him feel better about that piece of it.
I was told the other day, though, they had a study where that causes as much problems as the other parking because people aren't used to it. So, but like I said, we'll study it, and if we can do it, we will.
And then a follow-up question to that, another citizen brought up the suggestion that maybe there's signage saying the parking is for.
And that's noted.
Area.
We'll work on the signage.
Okay. And then, can you address the reason why this needs to happen now versus?
I think to continue with the plans for the library is very important. I think there's a lot of pressure on the commissioners. There's a lot of people out north who want a new library, and we'd like to make sure we keep money in this library and remodel this library. I also think it's fair that the programming is going to change in the library considerably, And I think parking becomes a different issue than it has been in the past. So we've tried to strike a balance. The commissioners are our friends, the library board's our friends, the trolley districts are our friends, and we're just trying to strike a balance that I think is reasonable and yet give some assurances to the library that they can move forward.
So I guess I just have a couple comments to make, and Mark alluded to it. It's always a balancing act for us, and in this case, it's a balancing act to honor the neighborhood as well as our greater community. And I'm looking at my notes. Our whole community passed the library bond, and what that means for all of us is $16 million directed at that library at the main library renovation. And that can be a catalyst for not only the library and drawing more people to the library, but also for improving the park, because we all know that it needs lots of help. And part of the library proposal is to have outdoor performances and an east entrance, and those are all things that will help the park. And I would hope that everybody that has commented and has been involved and has any care at all about this will be involved in this charrette and the upcoming Lester Park Master Plan. I think it's an opportunity for our community to unify and pull together and reinvent and re-envision this park. So if there are no further comments, I will go ahead and make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2015-53.
Second.
So we have the proposed adoption of the ordinance from Councilmember Gochner, second by Councilmember Blair. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks?
Aye.
Councilmember Blair?
Aye.
Councilmember Garner?
Aye.
Acting Chair White?
Aye. This passes. All right, on to the next.
And I just have a question for Mr. Montgomery, because it's something that came up. When is the East Central Community Plan slated for revisiting? Sorry.
Oh, that's a good question. We have about 5 community plans that were done in the 80s and early 90s that we haven't come back to revisit. East Central has been on its second round, and so would normally try to follow through and get those other communities reviewed first before we come back for the third round. So my guess with the 5 or 6 would probably be 5 or 6 years before we get back to that point.
And I'd also suggest, and I don't know the involvement of our recreation master plan, but I think we need to continue to move that along, especially in that area. So I really encourage that work with the local groups down there, so out there, over there. So next on our agenda is the nursing home, assisted living, or retirement home amendments.
We'll just wait just a moment.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, we'll bring you up, Mr.
I
Montgomery.
didn't want to hear about the nursing home.
Madam Chair, members of the council, the Planning Commission has forwarded to you a recommendation regarding a petition that had been filed to amend the PI ordinance regarding assisted living facilities. The present regulation limits assisted living facilities to a total of 30 occupancy of 30 individuals. In addition, the ordinance has provisions that talk about square footage per bed, And if you look at that calculation, many times properties could have more units than the 30 that the other provision has in the ordinance. When the petition was filed, we went back, researched, tried to figure out why the 30 and why did we have two different conflicting regulations in the same ordinance. And we couldn't really find an answer of why that limitation was placed at 30. So as we looked at the petition and discussed this with the Planning Commission, the consideration was that there is adequate protection in the ordinance using the square footage calculation to deal with density issues, and that limiting arbitrarily to just 30 total units, no matter how big the property is, was probably not the best approach to take than looking at the best developments that could take place on PI properties and those who wanted to use assisted living facilities on those PI properties. So the Planning Commission is recommending to you to revise the ordinance by striking the 30 room limit and just using the other language that exists in the ordinance to dictate densities, both for assisted living facilities, for residential developments, and let those standards be the controlling factors in the ordinance.
Any questions? I just have one question. We have to follow state ordinance or state law as far as the number of people and
Yeah, this does not change the fact that there's so many caretakers per beds and those type of things. Just, they'll still have to meet those requirements. If they have more people, they may get into other building code issues. This doesn't eliminate those.
Thanks. Any other questions?
Seems there's no more questions. I'll propose that we adopt ordinance 2015-54.
Right.
Oh,
Is there
receive public
anybody,
input.
any public input?
Seems
Seeing
there's
no movement.
Now I'll say
Second
that we
that.
adopt proposed ordinance 2015-54.
So we have a motion to adopt the ordinance by Councilmember Garner and second by Councilmember Gochner. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Wicks?
Aye.
Councilmember Blair?
Aye.
Councilmember Garner?
Aye.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Acting Chair White?
Aye. This passes. Next on the agenda is the reports from administration. First up is Mr. Cooper with the Quality Neighborhood Initiative.
Thank you. Members of the council, it's my pleasure to be here tonight to present to you a joint resolution adopting the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative. Thank you. So as you know, there's been a lot of work and effort that has gone into this initiative, and it's my privilege to be able to be the one to represent it and to present it to you tonight. Before I share some of the slides and the information on them, I'd like to just say thank you. Thank you for your work and your vision. Thanks to the council staff for all the support and assistance they've given our staff. And thank you to the administration for supporting us in some of these efforts. It's been a lot of work, and we're very excited about this. So I'd like to take a minute just to cover the high points of the initiative. It's in your packet. The full strategy is there. What we'll talk about is why we need something like this, why the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative. I'll describe what it is and what it isn't. Who will it impact? When will it happen? How we're going to communicate it, and who are our partners. The idea from the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative really stemmed from a combined vision of all of our strategic documents that we hold as a city, the general plan, the comprehensive economic development strategy, council plans, various council plans, and some other things. And as we scrubbed those various plans, we found a theme that wove through each one of them like a thread. And those are here before you now, and that's what we've really based the Quality Neighborhood Initiative from. Improving business and economic development opportunities is a high point in the plan. We need to continue to provide opportunity for the community. Improving the quality of life, that has a broad spectrum, but it is a fundamental element of the initiative. We've talked about creating a situation where Ogden is a community of choice. It is a competitive market, especially along the Wasatch Front, where travel and employment is relatively flexible. People live in Draper and work in Salt Lake. So we have a lot of options in terms of where to live relative to where we work, and we want Ogden to be a community of choice. And in doing so, we need to recognize and continue to emphasize our outdoor recreation opportunities and the assets that lie above us and around us. We've done a lot of work in the recent past to continue transit-oriented development and to make sure that we have a multimodal transportation system, and that's a component of the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative. Educational opportunities is key also. We have great school districts in the city, and we've done a lot in the recent months to bridge those the gaps in those relationships. When folks choose a place to live, they oftentimes look at the educational opportunities that are in the community and use that as a basis of where to buy a home or where to rent. And we want to make sure that we continue to support our educational institutions. And lastly, as part of the vision for this initiative, we want to make sure that we build on our rich heritage, both the people from Ogden and what they represent, the architecture, the history, those types of things. So why this initiative and why now? We're lucky to be able to host on occasion different communities as they come up, and they like to see what's happening in Ogden. They read the headlines. They know what's going on here from the news. And so we have the benefit of hosting them and sharing them with them some of the great things we have been able to do as a community. And inevitably, we're asked, how is this able to be done? A lot of times these other municipalities are asked by their councils or other folks, what is the role of city government? And they're really constrained in that role in some occasions. We are very lucky to be place shapers here. The role of our local government is to be place shapers and to promote the economic prosperity and the health and well-being of the community. And the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative really emphasizes our role as place shapers and gives us that opportunity to guide and to direct the vision of the city. And so I think it's an important aspect of what we're all doing here. The right housing in the right place is key to attracting and retaining the skill base necessary to sustain the inward investment. So our focus in the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative is on the things that we do best as a group. One of the things that the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative is not is a social program. Again, we're looking to emphasize our core competencies as not only a staff, but as a city, and what we are able to bring in terms of value add for this vision. So we'll be focusing on our heritage neighborhoods primarily, those neighborhoods that are attached to our downtown, the East Central being the first of those neighborhoods. We'll be joining with our community partners that already are doing social programs and running social programs. We'll be kind of bolting on with them in terms of the wraparound services, but we really want to make sure that we're enhancing our core competencies. So the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative in the context of this discussion is really housing centric. Again, the right housing in the right place is key to attracting and retaining the skill base necessary to sustain the inward investment in the city. One of the other things that this initiative is not is gentrification. That tends to have a negative connotation, and in this case, it's not very applicable. We're looking at more of a balance. I think we're all aware of the housing report, the joint housing report that came out from the county a little while ago, and in that it represented that Ogden City proper had over 4,000 extremely low, and very low housing units. And that was disproportionate to the other communities in the county. So we look to rectify that imbalance by creating more of a balance. We want our residents to not leave the city, and we don't want to displace them, but we do want to create different opportunities for them, both in the economic development and in the housing areas. So that's what the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative really focuses on, is creating that balance. As I mentioned, it is housing-centric. We're looking at also focusing on services within the neighborhoods, bringing back to those folks that are living in the East Central amenities that they need to have a walkable, sustainable community. It's one thing to have those things located in the downtown that require a vehicle to travel to. It's a whole different endeavor to get them into the neighborhoods and get the commercial community to realize that they can be profitable and successful in a neighborhood again. All of that neighborhood commercial has transitioned away from our housing areas and into clusters, and those clusters require a car generally to get to. So we want to kind of reverse that trend. Part of doing that is creating different ways to get to places, bike trails, PRTs, BRTs, multimodal transportation. So we want to continue to focus and support those efforts. And then again, a major element of this is to make sure that we enhance and sustain our architectural and our architectural heritage and the things that make Ogden great. In addition to those items, we'll be looking at our public spaces. There's no greater sign of a healthy, quality neighborhood than how the public spaces are used and maintained and designed. So we want to make sure that our public spaces are up to par, they're world class, and that they're being able to be accessed by as many people as possible. That goes for our public programs, making sure that our programs are equally as successful, making sure that everything is right-sized and compatible and collaborative and those types of things. And then again, working with our educational partners to promote sustainability, not just environmental sustainability, but educational sustainability. D-School is a great example of that, making, supporting a STEM-oriented facility that's going to get those young people attracted to STEM classifications as early on as possible. And all these things create stable households. All of these things give the ability for local issues to be handled at the local level, the neighborhood level. So that's true sustainability. We do have certain programs that have been in place for a long, long time that will also be part of this initiative. They actually make up the construct of what we will continue to do. You're familiar with most of these programs, the unit reduction program that allows us to downsize, assist in the downsizing of some of our multi-unit homes in the East Central. The infill housing program, where we're going in and finding infill lots or homes that need to be torn down and replaced and constructing new facilities. Our ACA HUD home rehabilitation program, where we receive foreclosed homes from HUD and we're able to convert those back into usable and affordable housing. Our HELP loan program, our home program, our Own and Ogden down payment assistance program, all of these things will continue under the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative. Our goal is to accelerate these things, to enhance them with more funding, with more marketing, and some other initiatives or interventions that we've targeted in the strategy that's in your packet. One of the big things out of all of those programs is the infill housing. We've had a lot of success. You're familiar with the Oak Den bungalows. That is ahead of schedule, that project of 23 homes. And we think that we can replicate those types of things within the East Central. And it really helps to take care of vacant properties, vacant homes, where we can go in, identify those key areas, and bring in a new subdivision. Those new subdivisions or home clusters really do a lot to catalyze the neighborhood and get people recognizing that investments being made into these neighborhoods and get them comfortable with making their own investments. Here's some examples of those programs. This is one of the infill projects where there was an old Looks like vacant, dilapidated home, no one wanted, pretty sorry, and it was essentially torn down and replaced with something that is period appropriate, something that looks like it belongs in Ogden, but also something that is a competitive home to what's available out there in the market. And it creates that opportunity where someone makes the choice to live in Ogden because of what was done here. Same thing here, taking a vacant lot and creating a desirable home, something that would add to the heritage of the neighborhood, but also be something that would be very desirable.
So I mentioned it before, and it's not in our packet, but that is.
There it is.
Okay, because I was going to tell you, you need to put something showing restoration instead of.
And this is it. I think this is a great
Okay,
example.
it wasn't in our packet.
Yeah,
so.
this is, and I appreciate that point, because this is a huge part of what we're doing in the existing programs, and what we would like to do more of under the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative is taking these homes that have been neglected. They've turned in home ownership. Someone has essentially lost these homes. It's reverted back to HUD, who is the lender, and we receive them, and we're able to invest in them in ways that maybe other folks can't, and then get them back on a market and get them occupied by someone who's going to continue that investment. So this is a great example of that. Not every home needs to be demolished. There are good quality homes that can be saved, that should be saved, and the Quality Neighborhood Initiative allows us to do that. And then we have projects like this. This is Imagine Jefferson 2. This is the proposed rendering. They're under construction now, and this is just another example of creating that desirable living space. This was a vacant lot. It was doing really nothing productive for the city. It was actually a liability for maintenance and things like that. So we were able to leverage that into a new project that's going to bring a lot of new residents to that area. It's 25th Street in Adams. So some of the overarching goals of the initiative is to increase owner occupancy rate. That's an important aspect of creating that sustainable neighborhood, giving people the ability to solve local problems at the local level. When you have a transient neighborhood and you don't know your neighbors, and the schools are made up of kids that in the first 6 months are different than the kids in the latter 6 months of the school year, then it becomes really hard to have a solid, self-sustaining neighborhood. So we want to make sure that we get that balance of owner occupancy. Right now we're below the state average, and so again, we're just trying to correct the scale and balance ourselves out to where we're more productive and sustainable. By doing this and by working parallel with economic development activities, we want to continue to enhance opportunity to help folks to come from the poverty levels into a living wage. We do that by making sure that we're always constantly trying to attract private investment. Public funds are not enough to do this. We realize that, and we try to be very respectful of public funds in the sense that we use them as catalysts to gain private investment. So continuing to create opportunity is reliant 100% on making sure that we continue to have private investment. And then lastly, in terms of the goals, we want to make sure that the standards of care for the homes are high. We have, again, some of the most architecturally significant and contributing homes in the state. People value that, and some of the homes are being neglected. So we want to make sure that we are able to kind of reach down and capture some of those that are the most significant and help them in the ways that we can to preserve them. This graphic illustrates our role in what really becomes a four-pillar idea in what is a quality community. The Quality Neighborhoods Initiative is just one tract, as you see. There needs to be a quality government component, quality social programs, quality education. All of these things work together in creating a quality community, a community of choice, a community that people choose to live in and are proud to live in. We've focused on the quality neighborhoods, again, because that is in line with our core competency, knowing that we need to bridge the gap between the other stakeholders in these other areas to make sure that we have a comprehensive, multifaceted approach to changing the fabric of our neighborhoods. Part of that multifaceted approach internally, and in order to support the housing and some of the initiatives that we have there, we have to focus on city ordinances. We've been working on looking at those ordinances that are outdated, that need to evolve to catch up with some of these things that we're attempting to do. And so we're going through them and scrubbing them to find those that really need to be tweaked in support of this activity. We are constantly trying to track down additional funding. Part of this initiative does appropriate $1 million a year for 5 years from the VDO lease revenue. And so that will be a huge boon that we will be able to leverage to bring money forward and work on some of these major projects. But it will take large amounts of money. And again, we're looking for a lot of that money to come from the private sector through the catalyst that we create with our public funds, but we'll need to continue to use local funds, federal funds, and private funds to bring about the change that we're looking for. We have had very great successes over the last few decades, but we're looking to, like I said, accelerate that, more amplitude, more velocity, and that's going to take an increased amount of money. And I don't want to neglect the concept of high-quality infrastructure. There's only so much that changing the housing stock can do. We need to remember that we have things above ground and below ground that are tied to those houses. And redevelopment and the creation of quality neighborhoods is not just a vertical consideration. It does have a horizontal element that we have to maintain, and making sure that our parks are right-sized, they're in the right location, making sure that our streets and sidewalks are safe and aesthetic, making sure that we have well-lit communities, making sure that all of those things work together and have a desirable presentation is a huge element of this too. And working with our community stakeholders and the service providers that are already out there that have these wraparound services has been a significant focus of this initiative, partnering with those other government agencies and other private stakeholders that can allow us to move forward in our singular focus, because we would know then at that time they are able to support us in the ways that we're weak on and really aren't part of our core competencies. I wanted to touch on briefly some of those parallel development activities that are so key when we're looking at creating velocity and amplitude in the housing area. We still have to make sure that we are continually providing opportunities at the local level. Ogden City is not a bedroom community. It was and is and can be a greater economic engine for the county and for northern Utah. So we want to make sure that we're bringing jobs to the city, not just to the downtown, but to the surrounding areas, and that you're able to live where you work and recreate where you live. All of those things really have to come together. So these are some of the activities that we'll be continually focused on to make sure that we're providing quality economic development opportunities and jobs for our citizens. The impact of this initiative we hope will be great in terms of the visual impact. There will be some folks that will be specifically impacted. We've thought through that scenario, and we've worked together to facilitate some information that helps them understand what their options are. If an individual or family is being displaced or relocated, there's a lot of options that we have that will, in most cases, put them in a better scenario. So we've worked together, as you know, to come up with a resource guide that really describes a lot of those services that are available. So if in the event you are an individual or a family that is impacted through redevelopment of any kind, then you don't just fall through the cracks. There are places for you to go that and people that will help you and show you the way. So that's also a major part of this initiative.
What do you see that, when you say there will be impacts, what does that mean?
Well, again, we have a very clear policy and procedure about relocation. So
And they would be relocated because?
if you're in a house that is targeted for redevelopment, or if you're in a house that no longer is habitable and you need to move, it would be an impact in that manner. So it would be basically.
And I'm assuming these would mostly be people renting, or would it be?
Likely.
Owners?
Yeah, likely. We do have a disproportionate amount of renters to homeowners, so it's reasonable to think that as we're going through and targeting these areas for redevelopment and working through some of this housing stock that no longer is relevant, that the most impacted would be renters, yes.
But you would potentially target owner-occupied homes as well?
We target areas. We wouldn't necessarily target types of people or classes of people.
I realize
It would
that,
just
but
be areas.
I'm trying to figure, so we need to educate people that are going to potentially be impacted and in this neighborhood. When you say people will be impacted and they have to move, what is the scenario that would cause them to be impacted, to have to move?
Well, again, it's a redevelopment scenario, and in the event something like that would happen, we would work one-on-one with those people, so they wouldn't be unaware of the situation, and it wouldn't be a blanket situation where everyone would need to be aware at the same time. It would.
So are we talking eminent domain, or, how, if you have somebody who owns their home, how are they going to be impacted if they don't want to sell, they don't want to move, they don't want to work with the city to improve their property?
Right now,
What does that mean?
Right now, eminent domain is very closely controlled through state statute and RDA law. So eminent domain would only be an option where it's allowed. But
when you're saying people would be impacted and it would be homeowners, I'm assuming that would be the tool that would be used?
Not all the time, not necessarily. You could be dealing with an owner of a home that lives in California that has a renter that could be impacted, and you'd be dealing specifically with the homeowner on an open negotiation, and that renter could not be aware of anything. So that's a scenario that could impact that renter, and that wouldn't include eminent domain. And that renter would still be able to get the information that they need to find another location that's suitable for them to live.
I understand that, but you did say that owner-occupied homes could be impacted too.
And that would be done through all allowable pathways and open negotiation. We've been very successful in approaching owner-occupants and renters alike in targeted redevelopment areas and having open and fair negotiations and having very successful projects. Good questions, thank you. So this is, I think, a great graphic to show the relationship of what we're doing and what the impacts are to the city. I think it's important to realize that this affects the city just as much as it affects citizens as well. So vibrant neighborhoods would equal a vibrant downtown. The downtown is considered the heart of the city. So as the downtown grows and becomes stronger, then that creates successful businesses that are locating their companies in the downtown. And as we continue to have successful businesses locate and operate in the city boundaries, we create a higher tax base. We create revenue to the city. And as we create a higher tax base and revenue to the city, then that improves our city services. And then that is disseminated back into the community at large. It allows us to make sure that we continue to operate at a high level and provide world-class services to our citizens. So as we take a granular level and focused on investment and change, then those efforts over time really come back to the community at large through improved city services. I think we've discussed this. I think we'll have some impacts, as I mentioned, and I think council staff has done a great job, and city staff together in putting together the resource guide that you have in your packet, and that's just chock full of information and resources for those that could potentially be impacted by a redevelopment scenario. When will this happen? We hope that you will consider this joint resolution tonight, approve it, and we can get to work. Again, we've been doing these things already for years. We hope to ramp up our activities through additional appropriations of money, additional staff resources, and we hope to continue this, not just for the 5 years that the resolution contemplates, but we hope to continue this for years to come. We think it's going to take a concerted effort to really make the changes that we need in the city over a significant amount of time. And communicating this whole initiative will be done through our website. The resource guide, I understand, will be available for people to look at tomorrow. Every project that we do has a path of approval that usually comes through the City Council or the RDA board. It certainly goes through the Planning Commission, the mayor's review. All of our projects that we do are authorized at a director level and sponsored at an administrative level. So there's a very transparent and procedural process that we go through to bring a project to light, and you folks have been part of that process. You've been a key to the successes of our projects thus far, so we hope to continue to do that, and the public will be able to engage anywhere along that process that they wish.
So I would encourage you to maybe set up some sort of informational email list, similar to what we have with city council agendas, but make it specific to this project, because you get people, you get a ton of emails, and having to wade through every city council agenda that gets sent out to try to figure out if it's something that's relevant to you or if it's something even related to this initiative. People aren't going to follow, and it's not going to really serve as a good tool to keep them apprised of what's going on.
Sure.
So I would suggest, there's a lot of great email tools like Constant Contact or MailChimp, things like that, where people can sign up. You can put a link on the website. People can sign up to get a newsletter and do like a monthly newsletter, or maybe every 2 months or whatever, something to let people know what's going on.
Sure.
When meetings are
That's a good
coming
idea.
up, things like that, so it's more
I think
targeted.
that's well noted. Thank you.
Our website sucks. It really does. And I don't see it improving anytime soon. And it is hard for people to decipher city council agendas, planning commission agendas, and all those things may or may not pertain to those impacted by this initiative. So.
Good comment. Thank you. So just to wrap it up, we want to highlight and emphasize that, again, we do have community partners. There are just a few of them on the slide there. The school district and the university being two of the largest stakeholders and best partners that we're working with. So we hope to reach out to all of those folks that can provide some assistance and support in this initiative. And last but not least, you. This is your chance to offer your support through approving the joint resolution. And again, thank you for all the feedback and the comments and the vision that you have. We feel that this is going to be a unifying document that allows us to move forward in an accelerated pace. All good things.
Thanks.
Any questions?
I just have a comment. I want to salute everyone that has worked on this. I know, Tom, you've been working on this for a very long time, and I think it's been a really good collaborative effort between the administration and the council staff, and I think it's very exciting. And so if there are no further comments, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adopt proposed joint resolution 2015-29.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Gochner, second by Councilmember Garner, to adopt the Quality Neighborhood Initiative.
We're not going to take public.
This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair?
Aye.
Councilmember Garner?
Aye.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks?
Are we not going to take public input on this? Be nice. I think we had a presentation. I think people may have some questions.
So, Madam Chair, it's not recognized on the agenda, but certainly if you wish to, that's your prerogative to accept public input. Yeah, you really need to back up.
I think it was kind of premature.
I will withdraw that motion for the moment.
Right. Is there any public input? Apparently there is.
Thank you very much this evening, council members. My name is Matthew Okendo. My address is 780 29th Street. I'm also a community activist here in Ogden. People know me as Malik Dayo. Some people do in the activism circles. I think there's some very good ideas that was just presented here as far as, improving our community. He did, have a slide that was dedicated to saying that this does not cause any type of gentrification. He doesn't really elaborate on how that's not going to take place. He hasn't mentioned any safeguards on how that's not going to happen. It sounds more like an assisted gentrification in a sense. And second question I have about this is bullet comments about making the community safer. How is this going to make the community safer? Is this going to be more policing? Is this going to be more surveillance? I think more needs to be looked into this as far as questions about gentrification. He's saying he's not targeting a specific group of people, but areas, but people in these areas are related to class in these areas. So I think another look needs to be taken very seriously into these to make sure that there are safeguards in place that don't cause gentrification in our community, because there's a lot of that going on already. If you look at Central Ogden, you can already see it's out of control. There's already gentrification taking place. We need to make sure that this has safeguards so that it don't happen, and ask that you don't vote on it until we make sure that those safeguards are in place. And we have further information on how is this going to improve the safety of these communities. In what way? That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Others?
Nancy Card, 949 East 22nd Street. My yard is slated for infill housing, and I'm not happy about it. I'm just hearing over and over again that I will be relinquishing my property for additional housing.
Is this related to the Quality Neighborhood Initiative?
Or the infill housing?
Infill housing. That's part of it.
That's the next one.
That's the next one?
I'm sorry.
Did I
Please go. Finish. Sorry, I didn't
So
realize.
I feel like a lot of the language is very evasive about how we're going to relocate people or take the properties where we want to build more houses. The neighborhood is pretty crowded and low income, and I think that's going to add to more concerns in the neighborhood as we keep infilling more and more residences that are low income. And I want it really, really clear about how properties are going to be taken from their owners. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. I can't see him, however. Would you like to respond?
Sure. I think both comments are very valid. Again, just to emphasize the way that projects are initialized. Again, eminent domain and the notion of taking is a very controlled process. You folks are really the gatekeepers to that power, and so that there is no carte blanche a power that you grant with this initiative, because that is already held by you through the RDA board and through the state statutes. So in those cases, you will always know of a scenario that would include an eminent domain situation. It would not be secret to anyone. In terms of the other comment, I'm not familiar with that property. I mentioned to Mr. Ogden about that property. He wasn't very familiar either, so we'll take a minute after this meeting and get some more information. And I'd love to talk more about gentrification and what we're trying to do. Just as a philosophical comment, gentrification really looks at taking something that from a 0 point and moving it across the meter. What we're trying to do, because we have such a diverse community already, and because we have such a disproportionate amount of poverty, then by infusing additional things into the community, we would never exceed that diversification class. It would take us a long, long time to go from where we're at to kind of a homogenous community, which is what gentrification is meant to do, is to make a kind of a homogenous environment. So because we are so diverse already, the initiative really contemplates balance, bringing in those things that a community really needs to be sustainable and to be able to support itself.
Madam Chair, may I also comment with regard to there was a special effort by administration and the council to reach out to our diverse community. So leaders that we're currently working with in our Diversity Connections project met several times with regard to this project and the proposal and provided input, and a number of changes were made based on that input. So at the last meeting, which I think was the third or fourth with this group, they felt comfortable with what was being presented. And part of that is the concern about if anyone is going to be displaced for whatever reason, that there are wraparound services available and that they're made known to the individuals. So in essence, we were trying to train those community leaders to have information both in the presentation, which can be made in the community, as well as this resource guide. I do want to give credit to Amy Sue Mabey from our staff, who spent a great deal of time pulling that together. It's not something that's readily available in our community about what resources are available, who to contact, how and when. And that's now in this process. Now tonight is being published and will be available to the community as well. So we did reach out to the service providers as well to let them know this was happening. Presentations will be made to various groups regarding that to provide additional information to them. The intention is to ensure that anyone that would be displaced will have an opportunity to provide or have the resources around them so that they can address whatever concerns they have. It's difficult to say specifically because there are lots of resources, but there are individuals in our community that will help. And with the assistance of our staff, Ward Ogden and his staff, we have specific programs that can help as well. So there's been attention given to that. I just wanted to make that known on the record.
Thank you.
With the diverse group, did that include people from different socioeconomic backgrounds or just different ethnic backgrounds?
There's primarily different ethnic backgrounds.
That's kind of my concern, is we're talking, you bring a lot of people into that group, and they're people from places of privilege. And
well, they're representing
they
their
are,
communities,
but
yes.
there's not much economic diversity in that.
Well, I'm more than you probably think, but I mean, they're not all living in large homes in parts of our community. They're members of this community. So I understand your concern.
I don't see a whole lot of economic diversity within, not that would kind of represent the neighborhood that we're looking at impacting. So that's one of my.
Well, the intention was to provide information so that they, as leaders of these various communities, can go into the community and be a trusted someone that they do trust, and have a presentation, have the discussion. So there's much more. This is a very lengthy project as well. I mean, it's 10 or more years in the making. So each time that there would be an action taken by the city, there will be the interaction will need to occur.
If there's no further discussion, I'll go ahead and again propose that we adopt Joint Resolution 2015-29.
Second.
With that, there's a motion from Councilmember Gochner and second by Councilmember Garner to adopt the joint resolution for the Quality Neighborhood Initiative. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair?
Aye.
Councilmember Garner?
Aye.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks?
No.
Acting Chair White?
Aye.
I'll give the reason for my no vote. I think there's a lot of generalizations that were presented. I don't know that we have a really good plan to do public outreach to the people impacted, and just don't feel comfortable supporting something like that without those details properly addressed. So that's the reason for my no vote.
I'd just like to follow up too. I kind of, I believe that there was a little bit of going into this, there was a trust process, or a kind of just trust us, this will work. And I think we have built a really good collaborative effort and have created a lot of checks and balances in order for us to feel that we are part of the process. And I know that that's been difficult to deal with us on that, but we, I think pushing back a little bit, we've got some good checks and balances. Next, if there's anything else. Next is the infill housing programs guideline.
Ward Ogden will be presenting this.
Council members, it's great to be here tonight. The item before you, first item is the infill housing program guidelines. We don't have a presentation of this one in particular.
Oh, sorry.
It's the next two. We have a relatively minor amendment that was proposed in the spring and waited for the Quality Neighborhoods presentation to be finalized. In 2011, the City Council approved the adoption of the infill housing program guidelines. These guidelines specify how the city-funded development sites will be selected and how funds will be used. The direction is given towards design, contracting, agreements with outside developers, procedures outlined for historic preservation, and individual projects of no more than 10 homes on contiguous lots are allowed. Larger projects would need to come to the City Council for approval. So this is one of the programs that implements the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative. So what we're really talking about is the larger project category here. And what we need is additional flexibility in undertaking pre-development work on some of these larger projects, such as land acquisition, clearance, holding costs that occur over an extended period of time. And we need to be able to quickly capture opportunities for acquisition and to prevent undesirable uses from continuing. Need to design, finance, structuring, and environmental work must be addressed before the final concept can come to the council for approval. So that's kind of the background for the request. The modifications that we're proposing are that, again, this infill housing guideline applies citywide. It's not just East Central. The proposed modifications are that pre-development costs be included in the ability to have some flexibility in using funds for pre-development costs, and that individual acquisitions that exceed $250,000 would come to the council. So those acquisitions lower than that, we would undertake those as part of our pre-development work. But then, of course, the projects obviously come back to the City Council for approval and for vertical construction. So we're really only talking about the phase of the pre-development phase. So are there any questions?
Questions? Any public input, I guess, since we've started that?
Seeing none, I will go ahead and make a motion that we adopt proposed resolution 2015-17.
Second.
So we have a motion to adopt the infill housing program guidelines by Councilmember Blair, second by Councilmember Gochner. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Garner.
Aye.
Councilmember Gochner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Acting Chair White.
Aye. That passes. Next on the agenda is the Ogden City School District Interlocal Agreement Amendment.
A brief slideshow. Today we'll try to make this concise as possible. It's regarding the interlocal agreement that the city has with the school district for the development of a new school in the D School area. This, of course, is a picture of the existing D School that was planned to be eliminated or removed from the inventory of the school district and no longer operational. In the 60s, the school was built, the late 60s. In the 2000s, the school district determined that the school would be vacated and a new school would be built. In 2012, the mayor and the school district superintendent entered into a memorandum of understanding that set the stage for the interlocal agreement that was eventually adopted. So we put together some work that we would come together with and present to both the city council and to the school board. And then that interlocal agreement was signed in March of 2013. The school site was subsequently acquired, and design work, which was schematic at the time we were doing the interlocal agreement, became more detailed, and the parking arrangements and ingress and egress designs were done, and so a third-party agreement was entered into between the LDS Church, the city, and the school district that dealt with the west entry, basically the west entry parking and access. The interlocal agreement, just to quickly outline the school district and the city's responsibilities, the school district is responsible to select the 5-acre site west of Liberty Park, which is the 2100 block of Madison Avenue, to acquire the properties, to finance the acquisition and construction, and to construct the elementary school, which is expected to open in 2015, but now is scheduled to open in 2016. They were to sell the former D School site to Ogden City in 2016, but that, of course, due to the school opening schedule, needs to change to 2017. And they would enter into a shared use agreement for the use of Liberty Park, a shared use agreement with the city. The city's responsibilities were to act as the acquisition agent for the school district, so we helped them with the acquisition of those parcels. And that we would purchase the D School site from them, again, changed to 2017. We would close the 2100 block of Madison Avenue to make way for the integration of the school and the park, and that we would perform some upgrades to the Liberty Park and enter into the shared use agreement for the use of that park. Just quickly to show the geography of this project, the yellow represents the 5-acre site, and of course you see a parking lot to the left. It's exactly 1 acre in size, and that is the parcel that the school district made arrangements to purchase from the LDS Church. That was originally intended to be used as an entrance, but it wasn't fully designed yet, so it didn't make its way into the original plan, but it was intended that way from the start. And there were discussions with both the city and the LDS Church prior to entering into the memorandum and to the interlocal agreement. Here's the existing D School site. It also shows the parking lot of the church, which is proposed to be expanded. And here is the final site plan showing the entrance on the left. Of course, that's the west entrance to the new D school. It takes in the 1 acre parcel that was purchased from the church and a half-acre parcel that was purchased from Ogden City. There are changes that needed to be made. Of course, we've talked about the schedule changes for opening the new school from 16 to from the 15 opening year till the 2016 year. And then the purchase date of the D school site needs to be modified. And so we're suggesting that to be no later than February 28th of 2017. The changes to the land, and I've got a graphic to show this in a minute. The west entry, of course, was originally planned, as I mentioned, but not fully designed. And so the site plan, when it was finally designed, indicated how much land and how the layout was going to work in that parking. Subsequent to that design, and negotiations were put in place for the purchase of those parcels for the west entry, a three-party agreement was entered into, and basically the functions of that relative to the land are that the church would transfer their 1 acre parking lot to the school district in exchange for a 1 acre parcel on the D school site and the expansion of their parking lot. So they wanted to get an equal amount of land and an equal amount of parking. And that was a requirement that the church put in place, and it was pretty much non-negotiable. So there was a design that was able to make that happen. Then that 1 acre parcel, which was originally in the agreement that the city would purchase from the school district, we were going to buy all of their land, but now since they've sold or will sell a 1 acre parcel to the church, that needs to be extracted out of our deal. And then the half-acre parcel that the city owned adjacent to the church's existing parking lot that's used for the west entry of the school, would be the value of that land would be traded for an equal value on the existing D school site when we purchase it. So effectively, we won't pay for half of an acre of land on the D school site when we purchase it. Here's the graphic of how that lays out. Again, here's the D school, or the new school parcel here. The CPB means Corporation of Presiding Bishopric. That's the entity that owns it on behalf of the LDS Church. So this is the 1 acre parcel that they own, and this is the city parcel that was sold to the school district. This is the graphic of the of the existing D school site, and you'll see in the red, outlined in the red, is the 1 acre parcel that is going to be transferred to the LDS Church and for expansion of their parking lot. And this is how it lays on the land. Again, here's the 1 acre parcel that's extracted from our agreement and included now with the church. The way that the parking lot is designed is that it's going to go to approximately this location. So it will extend that line out and something like this. And then it'll be restriped and reconstructed and essentially the same amount of parking, not quite the same number of stalls, but essentially the same amount of parking will be installed there. So the changes, again, to the interlocal agreement, amendment number 1 would have a revision to section 4 that revises the new school date opening to the school year of 16-17. We revised section 6 to have the city buy the D school site on or before February 28th of 17. We removed the 1 acre parcel on the D school site sold to the church from the land that will be sold to Ogden City, and deduct the value of a half acre of the D school site from the Ogden City's payment in exchange for a half acre of the city land. Those are the changes. Are there questions?
Two questions. So there was one part of that LDS church that was not, their parcel is not parking, it's...
Right.
What is it?
That will be landscaped.
Okay.
It's going to be a buffer.
Okay, and then we did have a citizen earlier talk about shared parking.
Uh-huh.
Are there any discussions or any plans
certainly.
for that?
Yes,
Can you
shared
talk-
parking was a big part of the discussion. In fact, maybe I can go backwards. I'm not sure how to do that. I'll go arrows. There we go. To an overhead that shows it. There we go. Originally, the idea was that there would be kind of a shared symbiotic relationship between the school and the church, because we knew that there was a parking lot there, and that discussion was entered into from, as I said, before the MOU was even signed and before the interlocal agreement. So those discussions were in play in terms of how the school could use, they could share parking on heavy use weekends where the church needed a lot of parking, and maybe there's some overflow for some school use that needed to take place as well. So it was always intended that there would be some kind of, shared use, and I think there still is. However, in the negotiations with the church, their real estate department followed their philosophy, which is it's pretty much not a thing that bends, and that is if they lost an acre of land, they needed an acre back, and they didn't want to lose any parking stalls. So there is a net increase in the number of stalls there. The other thing to realize is that the school itself, the capacity of the school is going to more than double. So, there's probably an increased need for parking as well. So there's a net increase, but there is still shared parking.
And I think this question was asked at some point in time, but by parceling it the way you've done it, we still have the ability, or there's some good growth ability on our part as far as the old D school site,
Yes,
correct? I mean,
the
it's
ability
not
to
cut up so much that
develop
we can't
that.
put something on there.
That's right. The parking lot will come into here, and so it actually when it lays out, it works out pretty well, frankly. So, there's the possibility of losing a few home sites or a couple of, a little bit of land there, but it really does work well as a buffer from the church. They've got an extra portion on the west side that now will be a landscaped area. So it's an adequate buffer, and we think that it's a good design.
Any other questions?
There is no further discussion. I will make a motion that we adopt proposed resolution 2015-18.
Second.
We have a motion to adopt the Ogden City School District Interlocal Agreement by Councilmember Gochner, second by Councilmember Blair.
Public comment on this one also?
Could
We have-
just keep going on the public comment. Should we continue to
We
go?
have one member of public.
Actually, it would be on each specific item, you need to make that decision. So if you desire to, you could, certainly.
Go ahead.
So we have the motion to adopt by the interlocal agreement by Councilmember Gochner, second by Councilmember Garner. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Garner.
Aye.
Acting Chair White.
Aye. That passes. Next on the agenda is the transfer of parcels of land to the redevelopment agency. Mr. Ogden.
Ward's trying to outdo Greg Montgomery tonight in presentations.
I know. Yes, I do. It's going to be, that's it. That's the one right there. The next item before you is a discussion about helping the city helping the RDA facilitate the development of a redevelopment project on 550 24th Street. And the city is proposed to have a role in that development through the financing of the acquisition of those parcels. And the way that we're proposing that the city do that is to transfer some land to the RDA, and then the RDA would then use that as a trade towards the purchase of one of those parcels. Just to quickly outline the purposes of that transfer and the objectives we're trying to meet on that 550 24th Street infill project. The phase one is really aiming at eliminating slum and blight. We'll get into a little bit more in the RDA meeting upcoming about this project, but it's been a vacant, kind of blighted situation there for many, many years, and it's been highlighted even in the East Central Community Plan as a project that really needs to come down and something else needs to go there. So we're proposing that the city participate in this project, and then eventually some infill housing will be built there. Here's the site, just so you'll get a picture of where that's at. It's 24th Street, just east of the St. Joseph's Catholic Church right here. And so it's the big vacant commercial building, office building here, and another long, low one-story commercial building there, and a lot of vacant land as well. The way that we're proposing the city to be involved is through two things. One is the transfer of this land on Shoups Lane, which has a value of $100,000, and one of the owners has agreed to take that in trade and as in kind for $100,000 in value of his property. And then there's an additional amount of money, $248,000, which is land sale proceeds that was received through the sale of city property on the corner of 25th and Adams, which is now the building site for Imagine Jefferson 2. It's the site where that's being built right now. So we received that in August, and those funds are not in the budget yet, but would be coming into the budget in a budget opening if approved. And so what we're proposing is that the city participate in this project because we feel that it's best to be an RDA project, so we propose the city transfer this $248,000 of sale proceeds to the RDA Housing Fund, and then that be used towards the acquisition of these parcels, as well as trading the land on Shoups Lane, which has a value of $100,000. I'll just quickly show the Shoups Lane land. It's behind the Prairie Schooner Restaurant, between the Sunchase Apartments and Riverview Apartments. It's kind of landlocked and hidden back there. It was purchased in 1987 by the redevelopment agency to help facilitate a redevelopment project on the Sunchase Apartments. And that redevelopment area was established in 1986. The expansion of the Sunchase did not take place, and those three parcels that you can see have sat vacant since 1987. And we incur maintenance costs. It's zoned for multifamily housing, and it's not a project that we've ever really found a use for, but the owner of one of these commercial buildings is interested in this because it's land that you could build duplexes on it or something as an income property, and it's certainly zoned for that. And so we feel like there's some good reasons for the city to consider trading this land to the RDA and then in kind back to facilitate a redevelopment project. Just quick pictures of the land. It's vacant. This home down here is just one of the homes that's currently on that street. So it's currently has a couple of homes on it that are occupied and in pretty good shape. So that's the nature of the resolution, that the city participate in this redevelopment project by these two means. Are there any further questions?
Questions? Thanks.
No further questions. I'll propose that we adopt Resolution 2015-16.
Second.
There's a motion to adopt the transfer of parcels of land to the redevelopment agency by Councilmember Garner, second by Councilmember Blair. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Wicks? Aye. Councilmember Blair?
Aye.
Councilmember Garner?
Aye.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Acting Chair White?
Aye. This passes. Next up is public comments. This is an opportunity to address the council regarding your concerns or ideas. Please state your name and address clearly for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, Travis. Again, I haven't moved since like 10 minutes ago, but primarily I'd just like to congratulate the Neighborhood Initiative and a lot of those things. I've witnessed that firsthand 10 years ago. I believe it was an outgrowth of the Families First Initiative, or Family First Initiative, and it just kind of kept going. So I think that those aspects of infill, unit reduction, I've seen a tremendous asset with regards to my neighborhood. My parents have been there 50 years. There were 3 owner-occupieds on the east side of the street, 1 owner-occupied on the west side, and now I think it's close to 8 and 10 as far as owner occupancy. So congratulations to the city on that. I think that there's tremendous opportunity for growth. Also, I spoke earlier with regards to shared parking. Shared parking is idea for parking reduction, not just build massive parking and have more, and then share it when there's an overflow. So 80 additional stalls just doesn't sit well with me for that area. So obviously now that it's adopted and parties agree, just let's hurry and fine tune it and let's get it to the Planning Commission. If I have to do everything that's said in that agreement, here's all the applications I have to fill out, and over $1,000, $1,200, almost $1,200 worth of application fees for me to do the same thing that you guys just passed in the interlocal agreement. So that means there is a cost. If you go to the bottom line, it says there was no net cost. There's a cost, administrative cost. And so if you're charging the public administrative cost, then this also needs to go into the school district deal with regards to recouping our costs. If the LDS Church is getting an acre for an acre, we should get a half acre for a half acre. Our lot technically was a dog on that east side of the street. It's now bad on this side, you know, or it's now they can say, oh, it's not worth as much, but acre for acre. And then the other side line is that just public safety, just aspects of the police possibly having for their meter when they do parking enforcement an actual handheld device so they're not back and forth to the Jeep. I witnessed it on Ogden High School the first day of school, and that guy was blocking traffic. People were going around him on the double yellow, causing possibly all these kids running late for school, people driving late for school, that we need to look at possibly handheld devices for our individuals that help with traffic or parking enforcement. And I appreciate your time. And then chip seal on Jefferson Avenue, if it can be actually the black treated kind instead of the ugly gray next time, and that you also protect the crosswalks and the infrastructure that's already there. And also the stop sign was run over several weeks ago. The police were really quick to respond. Public Ways and Parks put a temporary stop sign up quick, but now it's just a big corrugated steel sign, not the black like matches the district. So why do I have to make guidelines to make everything fit in my neighborhood, but the city just goes and chip seals right over the top of the crosswalk that we spent a fortune for, those types of things. So protect them just as well as you do the manhole covers. Thanks.
Any others? Seeing none, any comments from the administration?
The dudes over there. It's important, I think, to explain that Mayor Caldwell decided, since there's a couple holidays at the end of the week, to take the week. So he's with his family and vacationing. So that's where he is tonight. I wanted to thank the effort that's gone forward on the quality neighborhoods. Tom and Brandon have spent a lot of time and energy on this, and so has your council staff. It's been a good collaborative effort, and I have really appreciated watching this go forward, and I really appreciate Tom and Brandon. I like to give them bad time, but they do a great job. I want to just remind you that we have the Santa Run, the parade, the lights coming on, and the fireworks on Saturday. Hopefully you'll come join us and be part of that. And finally, I am very grateful for the city and for the staff here, and which is appropriate on this week. I wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving.
Council members.
One quick comment. We had an avalanche of leaves last week, and a shout out to the Public Works crews that were out there after the big rainstorm, because they had a mountain of work and they did a great job.
Anything else?
Madam Chair, may I mention also a recognition needs to go to Janine Eller-Smith, who led our efforts on the quality neighborhoods and worked very closely with Brandon, so thank you to you as well.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Sorry.
Aye.
We take just a short break
Yes,
as
sorry.
we move to the RDA meeting. There are a couple of folks who need a quick break.